Dave Cullen. The Twitter is Dave Cullen CF. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Now, I just want to start off with what we were covering before the break. Again, when we talk about censorship, every time the argument comes back, you know, Facebook's a private company, YouTube's a private company, they can censor who they want. Well, one, you look at Google, which owns YouTube, it's a monopoly. It's crossed that line from being just a private company. Now you have to basically use their services to do anything on the internet in terms of content creation. So it's no longer just a private company, it's a monopoly. And then the other issue, which we can talk about, is they're working hand in hand in Europe, in the Middle East, with governments to literally target thought criminals. In Germany, you've got people being reported to the government. They get home visits from the police for Facebook posts about their government's migrant policy. In Pakistan, now we have a headline out of Reuters, Pakistan says Facebook vows to tackle concerns over blasphemous content. So Facebook is working directly with the Pakistani government to hunt down thought criminals. You have a guy, Ayaz Nizami, who faces the death penalty for leaving the religion of Islam, for criticizing Islam in Pakistan. Now Facebook is going to help the government target people like him who face execution. So Dave, I mean, it really goes beyond the argument of it's just a private company when you've got these social media networks working hand in hand with government to harass people, to target thought criminals, right?
Yeah, but on the plus side, Paul, I mean, all the really cool people are going to be in the gulags, aren't they? Quite honestly, look, what we're dealing with here is the fact, and I've said this before, the legislation, the proposed legislation and the bills that are coming down the line from governments, we're working in tandem with these social networks, as we know, like the EU hate speech code that Twitter, Microsoft, YouTube all signed up to last year, as well as Facebook. They sound very similar to community guidelines on a social network. They would not be out of place with something that you would read on a social justice college campus. Now, I actually spoke to Andrew Torba, who's the CEO of Gab.ai, which is the new free speech Twitter alternative that you've probably heard about for all the wrong reasons, because everybody has smeared it as the new alt-right Twitter. It's anything but. And, you know, he was speaking to me about the level of hit pieces that they're receiving. But what's truly disturbing and Orwellian about all of this is the fact that you talk about the private companies, you talk about the monopolies they have. They also have so much of an ecosystem. You have the likes of Apple that will not let the Gab app into their iOS app store. Now, this obviously means that iOS users on their iPhone and their iPad are not going to be able to get access to this application because it's been smeared as something through a series of hit pieces. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the private company argument, imagine your computer is your home and outside on the street is the internet. Okay, but what if the street is owned by a corporation? If you're not on Google, if your site isn't ranking on Google, or if it's been buried in a McCarthyite-style blacklist, you have no comeback. Everyone you know is operating on 6 or 7 major social networks, Twitter, Facebook, the likes of Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Google, whatever. If you're not there, if you've been blocked from that, you're effectively cut off from the internet. And now governments are actively moving to potentially silence these news sites altogether. This is the next thing, is going to be banning at the level of the ISP for political dissenters going to these new social networks.
No, I mean, that's it. It's the equivalent of the ISP directly cutting off someone's internet connection if they visit political websites that are deemed inappropriate by the ISP. It's got to that level now. So this private company argument may have worked years ago. It's completely bitten the dust by now. Let's get into YouTube, because you know, we've had this moral panic led by huge corporations about so-called extremist content appearing on YouTube. But, you know, Dave, why would anyone have a problem with that? I mean, we're just talking about jihadist propaganda and beheading videos, right?
Well, you would think, but as it turns out, you know, it's such a laugh. Really, it's corporate culture that does not understand internet culture at all. You talk about the culture wars, I've talked about them as well. The cultural zeitgeist is something that major corporates do not understand. You walk into any major multinational, they all subscribe to social justice. They all subscribe to, you know, feminism and diversity hires and all this kind of stuff and affirmative action. And so you have the likes of Audi, who actually were one of the first to pull out of the AdSense system only days ago. And a few months ago, I made a video responding to their absolutely ridiculous video in which they talked about the gender pay gap, and then, of course, embarrassingly had to walk it back in a tweet. And you have them, and now you have the likes of, both Kia and I believe it was Holden in car manufacturers in Australia saying, yeah, it's actually MGTOW videos. MGTOW is basically guys who don't want to have anything to do with relationships with women. They don't want to get married. Sound like ISIS to me, Paul. The likes of guys who are MRAs, who are fighting for men's rights, talking about unfair custody, divorce settlements and things like that in child custody, talking about men's depression, important issues the mainstream won't touch. And then, of course, anti-feminism. But we're supposed to support this socially corrosive cultural Marxist ideology of misandry that makes, men and women completely unhappy and has destroyed marriage in the Western world. Yeah, that's the kind of extremism they're talking about, Paul.
That's the extremism. Any narrative whatsoever that runs counter to theirs. Now I'm seeing completely demonetization of entire channels taking place. They seem to be doing it on the content of the speech in the videos, Dave, because we noticed that with this new YouTube restricted mode, entire channels were wiped clean. My channel, Alex Jones's channel, numerous other channels. But when you look at CNN, when you look at NBC, mysteriously, they're not afflicted by the same restriction process. Again, despite the fact that they cover many of the exact same issues. So, Dave, do you think they've just got complete immunity on everything, or are they just going through transcribed content of speech on YouTube now to decide who gets put on the naughty step?
Yeah, the demonetization as far back as we know from last year when it began, when they introduced that line about controversial or sensitive subjects and events, including subjects related to war, political conflicts, natural disasters and tragedies, even if graphic imagery is not shown. I mean, come on, that is written specifically, Paul, to try to make it impossible for alternative grassroots independent news journalism to happen. So when you read that, you knew immediately they had preferred news partners, CNN and others, and they aren't affected, as you say quite rightly, by restricted mode. Stephen Crowder's on the right. He takes great pains not to swear. His channel's completely gone. PewDiePie as well. Someone as I think is relatively safe on the center left, because I don't really think it's completely a right-left issue, is someone like Philip DeFranco. It's anybody in the alternative media who poses a threat to them. And quite honestly, if you look at YouTube TV, which is really where this is going to, all of the preferred partners over on YouTube TV, including in the entertainment industry, the old guard entertainment industry, and the mainstream news media, of course, they're preferred partners of YouTube. Of course, they are going to get complete immunity from any level of restriction or demonetization for that matter.
And it's really the double standard that gets me. I mean, the amount of times I've reported direct death threats and the email comes back from Facebook, from Twitter, this doesn't violate our community standards. Meanwhile, you've got absolute virulent racism on a daily basis. You have death threats. You have people doxing people's addresses, which literally just happened to someone I know today. He reported it. It's under police investigation, and yet Twitter still refuses to suspend this account. We had another example with Cassandra Fairbanks, where they were directly threatening her children with harm. This Antifa account, it went on for almost a week, day after day. Threats, violent threats towards children. Must have been thousands of people reporting these tweets to Twitter. It took a week. It took a big InfoWars expose article to finally get them to shut down this account. Meanwhile, Dave, you go on Facebook and use the word faggot, as in, Milo Yiannopoulos' dangerous faggot tour, that's his name for it. People are getting 30-day bans. So really, it's the double standard that gets me.
Or a faggot of sticks, of course. Let's not forget, Paul. It's interesting when you mention Twitter, because, I mean, they are effectively trying to radicalize people against Donald Trump. It's his most used platform. He's famous, of course, for using his Twitter to circumnavigate the lying, dying, fake news mainstream media. And what do you see? A complete manipulation. It's not surprising that all of these accounts that you reference are operating without any kind of impunity. So what you have is, when you go to Trump's Twitter, if he tweets something, everything underneath his tweets is negative, and it's all coming from verified Twitter account, leftists, of course, the positive account, the positive comments, the hey, you're doing a great job, Mr. President, hashtag MAGA, all that stuff is disconnected from the discussion thread within minutes or hours or buried. And so this is another blatant example.
That they were actually taking those responses out, correct?
Yes, it was actually a gentleman who covered it originally. I believe his name is Mike Keane. And then I conducted my own experiments and then had my own Twitter users go ahead and do the same thing. And everybody was able to corroborate exactly what we'd known for some time. Something was up. And of course, when you go to Trump's Facebook, nothing but positivity, because Twitter is the one that is, basically manipulating its algorithm. And you just look back 1 year from now, Paul, 1 year ago, on the 9th of March, Lawrence Southern launched the hashtag The Triggering. Okay, now that was all very funny, designed to trigger social justice warriors. Wow, what a difference a year has made. Imagine trying to get that to rank on Twitter now. The trending feed there is not an actual trending feed. It's a curated hashtag feed in exactly the same way as YouTube's trending feed is not a trending feed. It's all curated content. It's all safe. Nothing controversial or anti-leftist is going to be ranking over on YouTube. And that's exactly where these social networks are going. So it's worrying times ahead for sure.
I mean, Facebook got caught gaming their algorithm for the trending list to bury conservative subjects. Twitter has never admitted to that, as far as I know. But if you look, every single week they have an article by a guy called Charles M. Blow, I think his name is, a New York Times writer, big social justice leftist writer. Every single week when he releases his big article, the headline trends on Twitter. That is some kind of agreement they've got going on. You look at the tables, the graphs for the amount of interaction hashtags are getting. You can have conservative, pro-libertarian, whatever, pro-Trump hashtags getting 10 times the amount of engagement as something that benefits a leftist narrative. You will never see the pro-conservative hashtag on Twitter. So they are gaming the algorithm. It's not a fair system. It's a completely rigged game. I mean, do you think this is lost cause, or can we reach out to people within Twitter, within Facebook and YouTube? You know, are there people on our side that are fighting against this inside these corporations, do you think?
I very much doubt it, particularly with YouTube. I think when you look at what they want to do with YouTube TV, which is basically handed over to the old guard media, both in terms of entertainment and news media. Look, the old guard media, whether it's Sci-Fi Channel or Disney, whatever, I mean, you can see now why Maker had to drop PewDiePie. Because, I mean, obviously you can't have an edgelord knocking around on what is going to be a version of YouTube that is designed for on-demand television. It's going to be made safe. They want you back on the couch consuming media in the old way on television. And that's the reason why they have bigger plans here. And these entertainment providers, what they actually want to do is they want to take the eyes away from the gamers on YouTube who get, millions of subscribers, or the beauty bloggers. They don't care whether your stuff is political or not. Obviously, the people who are political are the first to go for sure, but they will come for everybody else as well. So I don't think these platforms really are savable, which is why I think people should be getting on Minds.com. I'm there myself, so are you. I speak regularly to Bill Ottman of Minds.com. He's the co-founder of the organization, and he's very, very committed to free speech. And I'll say this, I asked him recently what he would do if Minds was hit with the same penalty that Facebook and Twitter are facing now in Germany, $50 million fines if they don't remove hate speech. And he said, we just have to leave Germany. And this is the problem. This is what governments are going to be doing, Paul. I think this is a war we need to fight on a few levels. Yes, we need to move to the likes of vid.me, who seem more committed to free speech than YouTube, minds.com, who seem more committed to free speech than Facebook and Twitter. Yes, we need to go there to Gab as well. But I think people need, at this point, particularly when those sites start getting flagged or start getting blocked at the level of the ISP by governments, we will need to start to take to the streets with free speech protests of some kind in major cities. And I say this because look at the Women's March, it was global. We need to do the same kind of thing because, quite honestly, if we lose the internet, all we have left is the streets.
I mean, it's incredible. I think the only thing to do at this point is to ride it until the wheels fall off. I mean, we can continue going. The problem is for most people, of course, and this doesn't affect me, I don't get the money from the YouTube video content. I get paid directly by InfoWars, which is good because these hundreds, maybe even thousands of people now who make not just political commentary, but just engaging with funny memes, which is basically what PewDiePie does at this point, playing video games. His control, his influence, the fact that he's got 54 million subscribers petrifies them to such a degree. They ran that giant out of context hit piece on him. All the other leftist media outlets regurgitated it without question. What are we going to do? Are we just going to ride it until the wheels fall off? Are we going to move to these networks? Are we going to have a unified backlash where we all leave YouTube and Twitter simultaneously? I reckon we just ride it until the wheels fall off, and then we move on to these networks that we've already been, building up in the background.
I agree to a certain extent. What I would add to that is I think that the audiences are critical here. Look, these organizations are so dumb. They think that all they have to do is get rid of you and me and people like us, and then our audiences will just, like sheep, just go back and watch CNN and believe all the lies again. Once you've been red-pilled, you don't go back to being a feminist after you realize that it's all bull. All right, that's it. Once you're out of the matrix, there's no going back. The audiences are hungry for this content. This content is what made YouTube what it is. And now they're basically selling out the content creators and the audiences to what? Make YouTube back to television, which is what we were trying to get away from, to try and find interesting thought leaders like yourself. Well, I think there is that. And I do think what we need to do is hit the advertisers in the pocket. And they need to be red-pilled. They need to understand that we're not going to stand for this. Because if there's an economic model for free speech to continue, and there needs to be in a democratic society, then I think that's where it begins.
And that's the point. I mean, what kind of advertisements does Fox News and CNN take? It's all heart pills. I mean, CNN has to fund itself with, loans and gifts from Bahraini government and these other Gulf state dictatorships. These other groups have to take big fat checks from George Soros. They can't survive and thrive in a truly egalitarian capitalist system. We are crushing them on every single level, Dave. Vice came out with an article about a week ago. I think you posted it. We're going to skip this break, by the way, so we got a good 8 minutes left. Vice came out with an article which admitted, quote, the right was dominating YouTube. Now, you can call it the right, but as you mentioned, it's not even the right. Philip DeFranco is not right-wing, and yet every single one of his videos is restricted, buried on restricted mode. PewDiePie isn't even political. He plays around with some jokey memes. They absolutely slammed him. So people have to understand this is going to affect everyone. But I mean, that's the point, isn't it? It's going to literally destroy people's careers. I got an email from someone today who said, he had a few thousand subscribers on his channel, ranted a couple of times about feminism. They deleted his channel entirely. So it's about that chilling effect. But they need to realize, as you made the point, all the eyes are going to be on our content. You can't win back that audience. Trust in mainstream media, especially amongst young people, is completely collapsing. We have the audience. They can't compete with us in a truly egalitarian capitalist model. The projection shows them going off a cliff. So they always have to rig the game, Dave. But in the long term, that is not going to be financially rewarding for any advertisers, correct?
No, it's not. We still have the numbers. And the other thing is, I think we really need to reach out and develop our own platforms, specifically around advertising, something like FameBit, which now conveniently Google has actually purchased. But there are entities, there are organizations, there are right-wing advertisers out there who are absolutely willing to, they're either politically neutral or they're right-wing, where they do support what we do. And it's those people that we really need to reach out. There is a means of actually keeping this going. And yes, it is heartbreaking to know that it will create a chilling effect. So many people in the YouTube so-called skeptic community are going to, and again, that's a very broad term because it's people across the left and the right of the spectrum. We disagree on many things, and it might be minutia at the end of the day. We can agree that an absolutist interpretation of free speech is the only way that we can have a functioning democracy. And this is the really important point. So people will be kept alive on things like Patreon. So if you have a content creator, until they perhaps try and shut that down, if you have a favorite content creator, you should try to support them, because I think crowdfunding is going to become absolutely instrumental. And then going forward, there will be other ways that we can out-innovate this. I regularly speak to developers that are looking at new ways to develop new types of ad platforms that will be decentralized and that won't be under the control of large corporates like these.
We have minds.com, which of course I'm a member of, you're a member of. We've got gab.ai. Other platforms where people can find your information, tell people about your YouTube channel while it's still up there, and your Twitter account.
Yeah, well, I'm on YouTube. It's the channel's called Computing Forever. It used to be a tech channel, and then I realized there's actually more important existential threats in the world. I'm on Twitter there at Dave Cullen CF. You can also find me on Minds.com. I really recommend people join up to that because it's all about free speech. At Dave Cullen, also at Dave Cullen on Gab.ai. There I am taking a shot. Fantastic.
All right, we'll leave it there. Check out Dave. It's Computing Forever on YouTube. Just search for Dave Cullen on Twitter and check out his recent video about YouTube censorship. That is a key video. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Paul.